Well, we continue to track for you the meeting that is taking place at the UN Security Council. But right now, we want to turn our attentions to Syria itself. Danny Makki is a freelance journalist who was in Damascus when the airstrikes took place. He's also a commentator on the Syrian conflict for Open Democracy. That's a global media organization that focuses on human rights. And he joins us right now from the Syrian capital. So, Danny, thank you for joining us today. I want to begin with the airstrikes. They happened early morning Syrian time. It happened last night North American time. Give us a sense of where you were and what that was like.
Well, as you can imagine, at around 4:30 in the morning yesterday evening, I was awoken abruptly to the sound of about 10 or 11 cruise missiles landing on military bases nearby. I and most of Damascus as a population themselves were awoken by these missiles striking. So in essence, you could imagine the fact that this took place in the evening, at night, where it was pitch black. You had sound travels much faster in the evening, so you could see how in different sections and sides of Damascus you could hear every one of these rockets landing. The initial wave of about 10 to 11 rockets which landed in an area pretty nearby in East Damascus in Berzeh research facility was followed almost instantly by a second wave of attacks where you had warplanes in the sky. I could definitely verify that I could hear jets in the sky launching missiles, in addition to the cruise missiles which were being fired from the Mediterranean. You had Mezzeh military airport, which is in the center of Damascus, was also targeted, and a number of other installations in the capital. What we could also see was Syrian air defenses firing back at these missiles which were attempting to target Damascus. So you essentially had this battle which unfolded in the sky for the duration of about 1 hour, and as you can imagine, panic, trauma, fear, and not a lot of people understood what was happening at that period of time. So the initial reaction was definitely one of fear and trauma around Damascus.
So fear, as you say, but how does one even begin to respond? Did you find people running into the hallways of buildings or running down, trying to find shelter at the ground level?
Well, absolutely. I can speak for the building which I was in. A lot of the civilians had went below to one of the lower floors in an attempt to get to safety. Some of the civilians who had come out to their balconies for the initial 2 to 3 minutes of the attacks, as soon as they heard the bangs getting closer, they went right back into their houses. I mean, I went to the balcony for a period of 2 or 3 minutes, and then it literally was not safe anymore. You know, you could get some shrapnel from a missile. You had Syrian air defenses firing into the sky, tracer missiles, S-200, sorry. So there was definitely danger from all sides and perspectives. And as you can imagine, this is something like you've never seen before. Actually being in a location where nearby is being targeted by a Tomahawk missile by one of the most sophisticated militaries in the world is definitely something which would lead you to have some sort of concern, especially in the initial moments. It's only after the hour-long aggression was over that things began to return to what was a semblance of normality within Damascus. We've had pro-Assad protests in some of the streets and the squares, and we've even had a video of Assad going into work this morning just to show that, you know, everything's fine, nothing's happening. But I can definitely confirm to you, between 4:30 and 5:30 in the morning, things were not normal at all. In fact, there was a lot of panic among the civilians within Damascus and the general population in what was essentially limited strikes on a number of different military facilities, but arguably the entire civilian population heard and could visibly see these strikes. So there was a large amount of panic which seeped into the civilian population in Damascus. And then this is a population which has dealt with conflict and war for the last 7 years. So they're quite battle hardened from that perspective. So after the initial hour, things began to get back to normal, and civilians started leaving their homes. But the first hour was very traumatic, you know, and I've covered a lot of conflict in this country. I can definitely concur with that fact.
Well, you know, as you and I are speaking, the UN Security Council is meeting. The Russian delegation has asked for an emergency meeting to discuss the airstrikes that took place last night. And we just heard from the U.S. ambassador to the UN, Nikki Haley, saying that this action was taken so that there would be a stand against the use of chemical weapons in Syria. How are people in Damascus, the people that you've been hearing from, what are they saying about the strikes last night?
Well, a lot of them have kind of bought into the state narrative that this is the chemical attacks were essentially staged by the white helmets, and you saw the Russian comments yesterday on the particular matter. So ultimately, what you could say is that the general population in Damascus, after 7 years, is essentially loyal to Assad. So there's not going to be any counter narratives allying with Western views on Syria at this particular moment in time. So many of the Syrians who have come out to the streets are actually openly protesting US aggression on the country, rather than showing some sort of caution towards the Assad government, which may have acted perhaps unprofessionally, not issuing clarity on the matter from the inception of the chemical weapons accusations. This comes in tandem with a UN delegation which was meant to enter Douma today and view the chemical weapons site. In fact, Russian military police and Syrian police are actually in the site today. And this is something which the Syrian government have attempted to end as quickly as possible and get those militants to northern Aleppo as fast as possible, just so there would be no pretext for further issues internationally.
Danny, we appreciate your time and your recounting of what happened last night. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
And that's freelance journalist Danny Makki in Damascus.